Coming up on Network Africa. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo leads in early poll results. The United Nations says Ethiopia must quickly restore the rule of law in the northern Tigray region. Plus, Ugandan presidential candidate Bobi Wine survives alleged assassination attempt. Good afternoon and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin today in West Africa, where votes are being counted in Ghana after the presidential and parliamentary elections were held on Monday. Initial results suggest that the incumbent, Nana Akufo-Addo, is ahead of his rival, the former president John Mahama. The ruling National Patriotic Party, NPP, is also reported to be leading in the parliamentary polls, but Mr. Mahama's National Democratic Congress disputes this. Now, the election on Monday passed off largely peaceful, but local media in the central region say a group opened fire at one polling station, injuring about 2 people. Well, let's get more on this story from Joy News TV correspondent Gifty Ando Appiah, who joins us now live from Accra. Thank you so much, Gifty, for speaking to us on the program. Do tell us, what's the latest on Monday's election?
Well, thank you very much. Right now, we have certified results from 155 constituencies out of the 275 that we have. So as of 2:24, when we checked, we have 155. So we're looking forward to getting more results from 120 more constituencies. But so far, like you said, rightly said in your intro, the governing NPP has 51.89%, and the opposition NDC has 46.54% as of the last time I checked, which was 2:24. Now, the process has been described mainly by many voters as very fast, but as of the time that polls closed, there were rains in many parts of the country, which disrupted the subsequent processes of counting. But election observers have said, well, it's been fair. They've just highlighted a few issues, of ballot tampering, in at least two constituencies, and some network problems as well. Now, what is happening is that we're waiting for the EC to declare, that's the Electoral Commission, to declare the results as they promised to do within 24 hours after polls close. There have been concerns, doubts actually, that they will be able to do so, but they've insisted that they will do so. They've given us up to 5 p.m. today to give us the declaration. So for now, we're waiting, and it's been one press conference to the other by the parties.
I'm sure the waiting game is really tense between those candidates waiting to know what will become of the elections. And we understand that the National Democratic Congress, they're disputing some of these early results, especially the parliamentary election. Tell us more about that.
So let me start with the system that we run. We run the hybrid parliamentary system. So we have a majority and a minority. Right now, the governing NPP has the majority of 169 seats, and the NDC had 106 seats so far. If you are an independent and you are in the House, you'd have to be aligned to one of these parties. Now, it started with a press conference today where the NDC claimed to have flipped, as the word they use, which has now become a very popular word here, that it has flipped several seats that they lost and those that didn't belong to them. The NPP then responded with a press conference and disputed that, saying that they remain the majority in parliament. So what we know now, by way of our own collation that I can speak to, is that a good number of the NPP MPs have lost their seat. At least 28 of them we're looking at right now. And 21 of them are mainly ministers of state or deputy ministers. As of 9 a.m. today, the NDC said that they had 140 seats already. And they're saying that there is a correlation between the number of seats you win and the presidency. So they're claiming that they have won. They just ended a press conference before we came on air right now, and they're raising issues with the declaration of the results. What they are claiming is that they are winning, but they suspect that there is pressure from the headquarters of the Electoral Commission and the government on regional officers, according to them, to try and manipulate the results by responding to calls by many of the NPP persons to recount the ballots that have already been declared. They believe that the governing party is doing this, is instigating this, or their agents to do this so that they can manipulate the results as they go along. So these are the allegations that they're putting out there, and they're saying, they are warning that there will be consequences. But as I said, we'll have to wait for the Electoral Commission to announce its results, which will be the official results.
And even as we wait, the citizens, what are their expectations? What are the expectations of Ghanaians, regarding the next president of the country?
If I could just put this in before I even get to the expectations of Ghanaians as we go along, that you mentioned a few isolated cases of violence. There's this constituency that's very interesting. It's called the Fomina constituency, where the governing party's representative there opted out of the party. He went as an independent candidate because there was pressure on him to step down for someone else that the party had chosen to go through the election. He didn't. And it turns out that he won in that particular constituency. But there was a demand for recount, after which the EC, the Electoral Commission's office there, was set ablaze. So that's one of the cases. There's another case in a constituency where the member of parliament was arrested. He's been released as we speak. And then there was apparently an attempt to smash ballot boxes, which police officers and the security agencies say they nipped in the bud. Then the gunshot that you referred to in the central region happened in Ewutu Senya West, where the MP, as we speak, has lost. But the police tell us it didn't happen at the polling station, and that it happened in the area, not at the polling station. Now, to the question about the expectations of Ghanaians, one key thing that all surveys have pointed to as determining how people will voted this year has been education, because of the free SHS policy that the governing NPP introduced. So it looks like people are expecting a lot of that. They say that since they've introduced a free SHS, people have money in their pockets because they're not paying school fees for senior high school. So I think people are expecting someone who will be able to lead the country and bring a polarized country together. If you look at the results that the NDC had in the last election, it was barely like 1 million votes. So they have a lot on both sides. We're looking forward. I think Ghanaians are looking forward to someone who can bring these sides together, someone who can improve their lives, supporting this education policy, I believe, and someone who would it boils down to prosperity. People looking forward to having money in their pockets and an economy that is resilient, so that people can go about their business and, make life bearable for themselves.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Gifty. I'm sure we'll keep our eyes on 5 p.m. you say, to hear, the winner of Ghana's election. Gifty Ando Appiah, Joy News TV correspondent there from Accra. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Well, Liberians are voting in a referendum about shortening the presidential terms from 6 to 5 years and allowing citizens to have dual nationality. President George Weah, who was first elected in 2018, wants the presidential terms to be reduced from 6 to 5 years. But some of President Weah's critics are concerned that he could use the constitutional change to extend the number of terms that he serves. Liberian presidents are limited to 2 terms, but constitutional changes in neighboring Guinea and Cote d'Ivoire meant that the heads of state there could run for 3rd terms, despite the term limit still being in place. However, Mr. Weah's office has denied that this is his intention. Well, election materials have arrived in the Central African Republic ahead of the December 27th polls. The poll is being held despite security concerns due to fighting between rival militias. The country has experienced an acute humanitarian crisis since former President Francois Bozize's overthrow in 2013, which led to fighting between mainly Muslim and Christian militias. Large parts of the country remain under militia control.
A cargo plane carrying ballot boxes, voting booths and voter cards for the first round of the legislative and presidential elections in Central African Republic has arrived in the country. At Bangui Mpoko International Airport, the voting materials were received by the Deputy Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General in the Central African Republic, Dennis Brown, and other international and local officials. The election materials were donated by South Africa and the United Nations Development Programme, marking an important step in the preparations for the upcoming election slated for December 27th.
We are extremely satisfied with the progress in view of the electoral preparation. There was the mapping in May, June, then the implementation of the enumeration, then the arrival of the tablets, the training of tablet agents. The electoral list was made despite COVID, despite the rainy season.
President Faustin Touadéra, who has served as president since 2016, says he will stand for a second term. His first term has seen the precarious restoration of state institutions and the signing of a controversial agreement with armed groups in 2019, which has failed to bring lasting peace. Last week, the top court in the country rejected the candidacy of former President Bozize, despite security concerns of fighting between rival militias. Bozize planned to run against President Faustin Touadéra, but the court said the 74-year-old did not satisfy the good morality requirements for candidates. Over 1.8 million people have signed up for the December 27 polls, 46% of whom are women. More electoral materials are expected in the country in the coming weeks.
A 28-year-old Kenyan doctor has died of COVID-19 without having been paid for 5 months. An announcement from the doctors' union says that Stephen Mogushu did not have health insurance and his family had started an online fundraiser while he was being treated in the intensive care unit. The main doctors' union also tweeted that it was too steep a price for patriotism. Doctors in Kenya have complained about poor payment, lack of protective gear, and a lack of comprehensive medical cover, even as they battle the COVID-19 pandemic. We have joining us now Kenyan journalist Abby Agina live on the program to tell us more about this. Hello, Abby. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Such a sad news about the death of the doctor. How is the government reacting to this?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It is a very emotional moment for the doctor fraternity in the country. Majority of them are still grieving the sad demise of Dr. Mogushu. So far, the government has indicated their condolences since the passing on of the doctor. And the government has also maintained that all that is being peddled on various platforms, including social media, that the late doctor had arrears and all manner of allegations. The government has said they are looking into the issue. They cannot substantiate at this point in time. So it is still an emerging issue from what the government is saying so far. But of course, there's a lot of public outcry since his demise.
Before this tragic incident, doctors in Kenya have complained about poor payments, lack of protective gear, and even a lack of comprehensive medical cover. Now, what is the government really doing to resolve these issues?
Yes, it is a very interesting time for the health sector in the country. As you know, the doctors were to go on strike beginning Monday. They suspended the strike by another 14 days to allow for dialogue between the Doctors' Union and the Ministry of Health officials, as well as the Labour Ministry. So far, the issues that you have raised are clear. The Doctors' Union, that is the Kenya Medical Doctors Union, KMPDU, have maintained that they haven't received majority of their demands. And their demands were, of course, surrounding issues such as availability of protective equipment in the hospital. There are concerns around their arrears in regards to salaries. There are arrears in terms of allowances to be paid out. So the current state of affairs is that the two factions are still in talks, that is the Doctors' Union and the ministry officials. And sometime this week, we expect to get a final verdict on what next for the doctors.
And we do hope this verdict is something that would put smiles on the doctors' faces. Thank you so much, Abby Agina, Kenyan journalist there, joining us from Nairobi. Still ahead on the program. An Egyptian man transforms pencil tips into works of art. Please stay with us for more details. Thanks for staying with us. It is essential to quickly restore the rule of law in full respect of human rights in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. Now, that's according to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who says he is very concerned about the current situation in the region after 4 weeks of fighting between federal troops and the forces of the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Over 40,000 people have fled across the border to Sudan, and many others may have been forced from their homes. Within Tigray itself, it is thought that there are many people in need of humanitarian aid, and Mr. Guterres is asking for humanitarian access.
The Secretary General is very concerned about the current situation in the Tigray province in Ethiopia. He feels that it is essential to quickly restore the rule of law in full respect for human rights, promote social cohesion, an inclusive reconciliation, as well as to re-establish the delivery of public services and guaranteed unfettered humanitarian access. The United Nations remains totally committed to supporting the African Union initiative. We also remain fully committed to mobilizing the full capacity of the United Nations to provide humanitarian support to refugees, displaced people, and all population in distress. The Secretary General has been conveying these messages in the numerous conversations he's had with United Nations representatives on the ground and regional leaders, as well as Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia, with whom he spoke. He spoke.
Ugandan presidential candidate and musician Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobi Wine, says that he survived alleged assassination attempts in the last 2 weeks ahead of next month's elections. The politician last week briefly suspended his campaign after members of his campaign team were injured and his car damaged. Speaking during an interview, he says that there is no level playing field for presidential candidates in Uganda and that the military had taken over policing the campaign process. Uganda is expected to hold its election in January 2021, and Bobi Wine is looking to unseat President Yoweri Museveni, who has governed the country for 34 years. Despite the delay brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, about two-thirds the African Union member states have agreed on revised instruments, scheduled of tariff concessions and rules of origin for the continental free trade area to come into effect on the 1st of January 2021. This was a major outcome of the 13th AU summit attended by several heads of state and government that was hosted virtually over the weekend and chaired by South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. The African Continental Free Trade Area agreement is expected to create the largest free trade area in the world, measured by the number of countries participating. Ronnie Makwazani, corporate and international trade lawyer, says the African continent is good to get AfCFTA going, as it has been long overdue. However, the infrastructure will be a great challenge.
Now, the current phase, which I would call the first phase, which you're asking me about, is basically aimed at, implementing the agreement. And the first thing that's going to happen with that implementation is the removal of barriers, both tariff and non-tariff barriers that needs to be dealt with. And as a consequence, I would say it's a mild version of what the agreement can still do, potentially, because this phase will open up, tariffs will start getting removed, generally. And of course, we are hoping to see an impact on that in terms of the trade between the countries. However, remember that trade is dependent on the infrastructure that you have to make sure that there's a free flow of trade. And that is the biggest challenge that we have now, because you may, for example, have low or no tariffs in place, but you find that it takes 20 days for something to move from Kenya to Rwanda, when it would take only 2 days from Europe to the same country. So then you still can't do the trade because you still don't have an economic advantage from doing that.
Burundi and the European Union have agreed to relaunch a political dialogue with hopes of normalizing diplomatic ties after a 5-year suspension. That's according to President Evariste Ndayishimiye, who on Monday hosted the EU representative in Burundi, together with ambassadors of European countries. A statement from the president's office says that the two sides have agreed to break free from the past and look to the future by rebuilding their relationship. Burundi had accused the EU of sponsoring instability in the country following a failed coup in May 2015. The EU subsequently cut off budgetary support to the government, citing concerns of human rights violations. And we end the program in Egypt, where an Egyptian man is creatively transforming pencil tips into works of art. The artist carves miniature pharaonic figures out of the lead of a pencil. Let's take a look.
Armed with a microscope, some carving tools, and a pencil, an Egyptian artist carves pharaonic statues into tiny tips of pencils. Inspired by a Taiwanese artist who creates similar work, 28-year-old Ibrahim Bilal decided to use this medium to highlight Egyptian history in a unique way.
I started sculpting 3 years ago when I saw the sculptures carved on a pencil tip by a Taiwanese artist. I liked it very much and was attracted by the idea. I decided to try it out. I started many times, and my first attempts were unsuccessful, until I managed to produce my first sculpture, which boosted my morale to continue.
The artist, who graduated from law school, markets his work on social media platforms and runs an educational channel on YouTube where he shows his techniques.
I thought Egyptian heritage is the best thing to preserve through this kind of sculpting. When I started posting my pharaonic works, the reaction was unbelievable. This inspired me to further work on this idea and develop myself so that the quality becomes high and be at the same level of foreign artists who master this kind of art.
Bilal says he's planning to organize an exhibition soon where he can sell his 22 works of art.
And on that artistic note, we end the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.